Hello, my name is Dominic Weaver. I'm editor of FIDI Focus magazine, and I'm here in Dubrovnik at the 2025 FIDI Conference. I caught up with Anthony Shipp, CEO and President of Dyer Global, and we discussed the global household goods contract. So Anthony, could you give us an update on where we are with the household goods contract?
Sure. So the premise and sort of the genesis of the GHC was back in 2018. There was a service member that had a bad move, and that led all the way to a point where there was a congressional hearing with the U.S. transportation commanders, going in front of Congress to explain why and how they're going to make the quality get better. Fast forward over several different years, the program then was then planned and produced and created in order to come up with a concept of what the GHC is, which would have one single contractor that would manage the entire move management for the military. So we're at a point right now where that award obviously has been provided to the company that's the GHC winner. Currently, that GHC winner that happened back in 2022. Where we are today, right now, at the end of April in 2025. The plan is the program is divided in two parts, right? So there's continental U.S. port, or what we refer to as the domestic versus the international component of the program. They're planning on pushing through 25% of the volume is the goal and the target for them to get through on the domestic side of it. So we have to wait through the rest of this year to figure out whether or not they're going to be able to meet that goal.
So could you tell us a bit about how the extended deadline has affected global mobility in general?
Right now, it's basically business as usual. The horizon right now is that it's always been a program where they were going to have it based on phases. So the current program, the Defense Personal Property Program, also known as DP3, that is also being referred to as the legacy program. They are going to run that in parallel with GHC, so there's a point where that eventually would get phased out. So the businesses that are currently servicing the DoD right now are doing so under the current program, and whether or not they decide they want to participate in the GHC, that's still to be determined. But eventually, that's the goal is to phase that completely out, and then the current industry would then support the GHC program.
And what about the technological challenges that it's going to bring for businesses that get involved with the contract?
So like the current program right now, the military, the U.S. Transportation Command provides a piece of software that is only one direction where we can input in. There are software vendors that have come up with a solution that's not traditional like API type of technology that would be able to input the data for you, but they've come up with some other version of that. But at this point, the contract winner has to produce their own software. So how that would really work in the current space right now for the folks that are servicing the business, they would have to operate in two different software. The one that they're, like for example on COD shipments or non-military commercial moves, private moves and things of that nature would flow through one platform, but then they would have to move their military work through another piece of software. And as you can imagine, that would be problematic because you have double entry, there could be room for error, you have multiple equipment out in the field in order to be able to service that. So that's certainly a challenge for the industry.
And how do businesses respond to the uncertainty with this delayed timeline on GHC? Is diversification part of that process?
I think it's one of those, I think in the military they have this saying, it's called hurry up and wait. Everybody's been pushing to try to understand what the GHC is and how they would be able to mold their business in order to be able to support that. But everybody's pretty much in a holding pattern. And unless you've signed the master service agreement with the contract winner and you've worked through in good faith the elements of that contract and tried to put together the operational format in order to be able to service that business, unless you're at that stage, you're sitting back and waiting until the opportunity presents itself in a way that it's viable for you to be able to service that business under that current model. The industry is going through changes that are just happening naturally. The world is just changing all around us as we speak, in the sense that even if you look at RMCs and what they're dealing with and sort of where the market's at today, businesses that are actually servicing the actual moves itself are having to look at other ways that they could deploy their resources and their capital equipment in order to potentially service other business through some form of diversification. So I think any smart business leader is looking at this and is not going to naively just look at this entire problem set and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything. It'd be advisable to certainly look at what options do you have. And I think as the market is changing, there's other demands for those resources and that can cross-pollinate in different market segments. And it's, at the end of the day, it's logistics services, supply chain management of some sort. And as long as those businesses in their market are looking at how they can use that resource in their capital in order to deliver on those services, will be beneficial. The issue you have with that is if the GHC doesn't come to fruition, or it does come to fruition in some shape or form, the later part, then if you have these businesses that are found other ways of generating revenue, then those resources may not be available, which ultimately at the end of the day will then hurt the service member, because there will not be the movers to do the moves traditionally as they did in the past.
So once the GHC is implemented, do you think it's going to result in more industry consolidation?
Yeah, I think basically if we look at just the DoD space alone, on the international piece, in my case, I'm based out of Hawaii. It makes up 13% of the market share of all the volume that's going through that program. When you look at the totality of what the GHC contract winner, it would become the largest RMC in the marketplace. And as we know, that doesn't exist today. So that's something that, if that came to fruition and that was a reality, there is the potential for, not only are they doing the DoD space, they could get into all the federal agencies such as the FBI, the DEA, and State Department and things like that. And then that could easily creep over into the corporate market. So you could have essentially an entity that would be the large monopoly in the relocation management space.
So how's Dyer Global adapting its own business?
Yeah, so we haven't, as I described, we're sitting in the holding pattern right now. We've seen the master service agreement. It doesn't coincide with our business model as it is today. We've also seen the rate structure, and that certainly doesn't run right now with our current market conditions. So we are obviously going through the similar growth strategy of looking at diversification of how to even out the moving sector and provide other logistical services in the Hawaii market. However, we're doing great, and we're continuing to service the military under the current program, and we will continue to do so as long as that exists. And at some point, when the GHC is presenting us with a terms and conditions that we can work with, there's a potential and a possibility that we could service the business under that model.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.